But I appreciate the field lacrosse. I mean, where else do you get a sport where that position more than any is totally different? You know, a box goalie and a field goalie, it's almost not even the same build of human being. So to have you come on, who's being, you know, a Chris Sanderson kind of player who's been able to be excellent in both of them, you know, is great for us because there's not a lot. I mean, there's almost nobody that can do that.
Yeah, it's cool to kind of see like some of the younger guys who are doing it a little bit, like Brett Dobson. He was pretty good at both. Warren Hill, but yeah, it's not Evan Kirk, who's a couple years older than me. But yeah, it's pretty far and few between.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, well, yeah, I mean, I'll maybe lead with that. We'll get going here. People will jump on. But you know, this is an area where I just latched on to Chris when I first met him in 2002 or 2003. And then I had the privilege of working with Kyle Miller with Chris. So it's an area of field lacrosse goaltending that I've always felt probably more comfortable than the average coach because of their mentorship. And then of course you coming through and watching you develop and play, and it's such a different position, both mentally and physically, than any other goaltending position I've seen. But I'm going to let you take it from here, Mr. Ward, with field lacrosse, and we'll let you get going. We'll take questions into the Q&A section. If people have any, you can post them in there, and I have some that people have already sent me.
Sweet. Yeah. So again, I just have a quick presentation to do, or a slideshow to go through. It's going to be very similar to the box one I just did. You know, like Russ said, there are a ton of differences between the two positions, but at the root of the position, they are very similar. So the presentations might seem a little similar, and that's because they really are. But yeah,
I'll get Dave to make you a co-host, Dave or Bruce. Make you a co-host. So looks like
I think I'm all good. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah, I can see it. We're up.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, field lacrosse goalies. Again, same breakdown: equipment, warm up, practice, game, what you can do at home or what you can do on your own. So let's just jump right on into it. We are starting with the equipment. You know, the chest protector is a big one. I know down here, stateside, they just changed the rule so that everyone has to have a certified chest protector. I'm not sure if that's the case up north, but the new chest protectors have some extra protection or extra padding in the area of your heart. So the new chest protectors are really great. If you can get your hands on one of those, I would definitely recommend getting one of those. The helmet, you know, obviously you want to use the field lacrosse helmet, Cascade, Warrior, STX, they all make a great one. Have the throw protector there. Mouth guard, you know, gloves, you want to have goalie specific gloves. You can get away with having the player style gloves at the younger age, but again, as the kids start getting older and closer to high school, and are shooting harder, you're going to want your goalies to wear the proper gloves. I know growing up, I was using just the regular gloves for a long time. And I, you know, have basically a chronically sprained thumb. Like a gust of wind catches my top hand thumb sometimes, and it'll feel jammed up for a couple of weeks. So you're really going to want to make sure that your goalies are protected and have the proper gloves for the position. Cleats or turf shoes. I personally prefer turf shoes. I just feel like they feel more like a sneaker. I don't find cleats overly comfortable. And for those of you who've seen me play, I'm not much of a running style goalie like a Adam Gittleman or something like that. I very much stay in my crease and do as much from inside my crease as possible. So I don't find that I need that much more traction that a cleat would offer. Cup, again, I recommend using the hockey goalie cup. It's just much bigger. It's designed for a goalie. And then optional, these are big, especially for young goalies. pad your young goalies up as much as you want so that they can still move, but they're covered up so that when they get hit, it's not necessarily going to ruin the position for them. It's not going to deter them from wanting to be a goalie. So shin guards, thigh guards, like you see with basketball players, you can put slash guards on them, bicep pads, whatever you kind of want to make them as comfortable as possible. And then as they start to get more and more comfortable, you can start taking some of that equipment off of them. And, you can ditch the shin guards and thigh guards or whatever as they start to get more comfortable. But definitely I recommend gearing your goalies up a little bit more than you usually would, just to build up that comfort level and that, the getting hit with that ball over and over with equipment rather than just going in cold turkey and having get smoked with a lacrosse ball right away. Stance, again, very similar to the box, what I said in the box position. You're in your athletic position, feet around shoulder width apart, slight bend of your knees, chest slightly forward. Your balance is on the balls of your feet. And then the only real difference is where your stick is. And obviously your stick is up by your shoulder. You're going to want to have your goalie's top hand on the plastic. Bottom hand, I use a forearm length to measure how far down I have my bottom hand. And then just kind of anywhere in and around that range. I like to have them that far apart because that gives you control when you're stopping the ball, but it also is close enough together where you'll have the speed and the quickness to reach every part of the goal. Some goalies have their hands too far apart. They don't have as much movement to reach the entire goal. Or if their hands are too close together, they won't have control of their stick. And if someone really throws a hammer at them and it hits their stick, there's a better chance that the stick's going to twist, or the ball is going to basically go through the stick because they don't have that control that they need. And also for the bottom hand, I know a lot of goalies will throw a little bit of tape down there just to have an idea where their hand needs to go. And then as far as holding the stick, I want it to keep my top hand around eye level, shoulder level. You want to keep your stick flat. So the analogy that I use is that your stick is in between two panes of glass. And if you're poking it, the head of it forward or the butt end forward, you're going to break that pane of glass. So you want to keep that as flat as possible. And the reason for that is if your stick is out in front of your body and it's flat between those two panes of glass, you're not going to get caught up in your legs or your helmet when you're trying to move around and make saves. Another, I guess, to going back on for the equipment quick, myself personally, I like to use a short shaft. I use just an attack shaft. I know some goalies like to use the longer shafts. That's all preference. Personally, I just like to use that shorter shaft because I feel like I can make all the passes I need to with the shorter stick. And I'm also have the smallest stick possible to get, so it won't get caught in my shins and in my legs when I'm trying to move around the goal. So for a warm up, this is where the positions really start to change, is the warm up and in practice. If I have like 15 or 20 minutes, I love to do this longer warm up with goalies. I'll do this a lot when I'm doing like lessons or clinics with goalies. I'll start them off in the goal, no stick in their hand behind their back. I'm going to stand about 3-4 yards away from them, and I'm just going to underhand toss balls to each side of the goal. And what I want for my goalie is to be in their stance with their hands behind their back, their chest a little bit forward, right? And all I'm looking for is them to move side to side and try to hit the ball or have the ball hit them directly in the middle of their chest. And I'll do this about 10, 15 times and just get my goalies moving, trying to get that ball to hit them directly in the middle of their chest. After that, I'll have them still again with no stick. They'll bring their hands out in front of their body as if they're holding their stick. And I'll do the same thing, underhand toss from side to side. And the goal is for the goalies to catch the ball, but I don't want them reaching it. I want them to catch it as close to the middle as close to as in line as the middle of their chest as possible. I don't want them just standing there and reaching from side to side to catch the ball. I want them to move their bodies as well. After that, again, I'll do that 10 or 15 times each. before we move on. After that, they'll grab their stick and they'll flip it upside down. They'll give themselves about 6 inches of shaft above their top hand. And now I'm going to back up a little bit more, and I'm lightly going to shoot the balls high, so stick side high and off stick high, a little bit lighter than I would for a traditional warm-up. And again, the goal is for the goalies to make contact with the ball and the shaft. I'm not concerned with the ball if it goes in the net or not after. I just want them to make contact with the ball. And again, I'm looking for them to make contact with the ball as closely to the middle of their body as possible. Again, so they're moving their feet and they're not just standing there and reaching. And then after that, I'll do that one. Sorry, just step back. I'll do that one a little bit longer. I'll do that for like 15, 20 shots. And as they get more comfortable, I'll start to bring the heat a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. I'll progress as the drill goes on. And then after that, I'll just go into a regular warm-up. And if you don't have time to do the full elongated warm-up, this is what I'll just do anyways. This will be my only thing for a warm-up. But stick in hand, they're in their stance. We'll start all shots high. I'm not a big fan of doing like, all right, we're going to do 5 stick side high shots. Now we're going to do 5 off stick high shots and just going through each different spot. Because as my goalies are getting warm, I want them to warm their brains up as well. So I'll start going everything high and I'll mix it up. I'll go everything high, either both stick side and off stick side high. Okay, I'll do that for about 10, 15 shots. Then I'll go hip, same thing, everything hip, either stick side or off stick. Then I'll go low, everything either stick side or off stick for about 15 shots, 20 shots each. Just so that they're making saves. I'm not crushing them with shots, but they're making saves, but they also have to turn their brains on and think and react to the ball and not just have to be brain dead standing there and being like, okay, every single shot here is going off stick hit. I just need to do that over and over and over again. And again, I'll start off slower, and then as the warm-up progresses, I'll shoot a little bit harder, but I'll never get to my full shot power. And then once I'm done all 3 levels, I'll do a mix of everything. And if it's on like a bad grass, I'll do some shots after of bounces. I'll even do it on turf, but more or less I'll look at that more on a bad grass, because with the turf, you get much more of a true bounce. So that's the warm up. I don't like to do a ton of shots in the regular warm up. Again, it's more or less just getting my mind right, getting my movements right, and getting myself to a level where I can walk away and be like, okay, I'm good. I'm not trying to, kill myself with shots in the warm up. When you're in practice, so I know I said in the box presentation that you can hammer goalies with as many shots as you really want. Field is the complete opposite. You don't want to overuse your goalies. It's a very hard position. We're wearing very little equipment. The ball does hurt. And you would rather keep your goalie fresh for games rather than running them into the ground in practice and send them home with a ton of bruises and, them just not being comfortable heading into a game. So, you want your goalies to get shots. You want your goalies to be in drills. But what we like to do, if you don't have multiple goalies, have the goalie start in the drill. Once that goalie has, had a good run, you see that they're like making some really nice saves. You find that balance of not enough shots and too much shots. You find that happy medium. You get them out of there, and you let the drill continue on an empty cage. You just don't want to overuse your goalies and kill them in practice. You can use them in a number of drills. They just need to be controlled drills, right? Some drills that I love to do are odd man drills, whether that's like a 4-on-3 fast break or just simple 5-on-4s, man up, man down with 6-on-5. You can use them in a ton of those different drills because the shots aren't going to all be right on the doorstep. It's more game-like shots that they're going to see. But yeah, I'm a big fan of throwing my goalies in for odd man drills. And then obviously you have the build-ups of 1v1 up to 6v6. So goalies can be in there for those kind of drills. And then one thing that can actually be a huge benefit is just having them in for shooting drills. But again, have them be a very controlled setting, a slower tempo, and just use them, have drills that are at a slower pace so that the goalies can make the saves. Have guys take real shots, but they make saves, give them a second to reset, and then move on to the next shooter, rather than in a box setting like the horseshoe shooting drill where it's shot, 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 shot. Shot, let the goalie save it, or if it goes in, it goes in. Give them a second to reset, then go. And I wouldn't have them in there for any more than like 10, 15 shots, then take them out or switch the goalie. But if you have an empty goal, then you can kind of just speed through the rest of the shooting drill, grab all the balls, reset it, and then throw your goalie back in for another 10 or 15 shots. Take advantage of tennis balls. This is actually a huge benefit for not only your goalies, but also your players as well, right? Obviously for the goalies, it's not going to kill them. They're not gonna get a lot of bruises. The ball's still gonna sting a little bit, but they're not gonna have a dead heavy ball hitting them in a soft spot. So, tennis balls is a great alternative for shooting drills or any drills that you really want to do to have your goalie in net. And then on the flip side of that, tennis balls are a great resource for players. It teaches them to have soft hands. With the ball being that much lighter, it's so much easier for the ball to bounce out of their stick. So it's a great way to benefit the players and have them work on their softer hands, and then also the goalies on the other side and not killing them. They can take way more shots, and if they get hit, it's not as big of a deal. Keep players accountable when they're shooting, and I should have said this in the box one as well. But even at my high school, when I have doing a shooting drill, if you hit someone in the head, or if you hit their goalie in the head, you have to do 20 push-ups, or you have to do a lap or something. So just try and keep players accountable so that they're aiming rather than just trying to shoot as hard as they can through the goalie. And then keep it positive. As I said, goalie's a tough position, especially in field. Keep it positive. If they're struggling, go over them, give them a couple of words of encouragement, and try to help them out of the funk, and just keep things light with your goalies. When you're playing in a game, or you're coaching a game, for your goalie, a few points of emphasis, short-term memory, that next play mentality. I talked about it in the box presentation, but again, there's still nothing that you can do to change what's already happened. So you just need to be able to move on, think about the next play. Maybe there's something you need to correct, or maybe you just got scored on, right? There people score nice goals. Sometimes you just got to tip your cap and move on to the next play. At the same time, and one of the biggest points of emphasis that I have with my goalies that I'm coaching is that it's a very hard position. You look at the stats for Division I college lacrosse goalies, there are a lot of very, very good goalies and All-Americans that are only stopping the ball a little bit over 50%. I struggled with this quite a bit when I was younger because I was a box goalie first, and then I started playing field goalie. And I was so used to just stopping everything in box and making a ton of saves. And when I came over to field and I was letting in, rather than letting in like 5 to 8 goals a game in box, I'm letting in like 10 to 12 plus in field. And I'm only making 10 to 15 saves, maybe 20 on an unbelievable day. Saves a game rather than in box where I'm making 20, 30, 40 plus saves a game. That was something I really, really struggled with. So that's something that I always tell my goalies is look at the college goalies, look at the top college goalies, the best of the best. There might be a couple outliers that are pushing the top 50s and into the 60s and maybe even flirting with the 70s. But for the most part, all Americans are some of the best goalies in the country, are only stopping the ball just over 50% of the time. So you can't get too down on yourself, or you can't get too down on your goalies if they're in around that 50% range, because they're doing their job. Communication is massive. Goalies are essentially a quarterback of the defense. They need to be talking to their defense at all times. And this doesn't necessarily mean yelling, balls top left, balls top right. There are scenarios where that helps. For myself, I still communicate that when we're man down. And the reason for that is if we're in a man down situation, not everyone on my defense is going to be looking at the ball all the time. So I find that communicating those kind of commands, or making those kind of statements of where the ball is, helps when we're man down. But when we're playing 6-on-6, or if there's a fast break, I more or less want to communicate with my guys what I'm looking for. So a big thing that I look for in my high school goalies is top side, yelling at the ball carrier top side to get them up, to make sure they're driving them down the alley. Communicate who's hot, right? Who's hot? Hey, Johnny, you're in the middle, you're hot, you got the first slide. Who's the 2 slide? Hey, Mike, you're on the backside, let's step in a little bit, cover the middle, you've got Johnny's 2. Like those kinds of communications to make sure that the defense knows what is going on in the play. And obviously, it's a lot harder to expect that out of a younger goalie. But as goalies continue to get older and older and older, their communication needs to become more and more prevalent. Whereas once they hit the high school or start to get into the later years of high school, goalies literally shouldn't stop talking the entire time they're on defense, whether it's telling guys where they need to be, who's hot, who's on the 2, what we're looking for on the backside, when the ball is on the ground, yelling a check call when the ball's in the air, commanding guys on a clear and where we're looking for and where we need guys to go. Like just, they always need to be communicating, and that cannot be stressed enough. Patience, again, another one I talked about in my box presentation, but it's even more important in field, right? The margin of error in the field game is just that much smaller. So if I make a bad move in the box game, there's still a good chance I'm still going to get hit with the ball. But if I make a bad movement in the field game, the net is just that much bigger. There's a really high chance that it's going to go in on me. So you want your goalies to be as patient as possible. Although the goal is bigger and the goalie is smaller, you almost want your goalies to move less in the field game than they do in the box game, in terms of just waiting on that ball and getting them not to move until they absolutely have to, just because you start to waste movements and you start to have that hitch. Once you get to those older ages, kids are that much better. You're just going to catch yourself in trouble, and there's going to be, you're going to get scored on a lot more. Whereas in the box game, you can kind of rely on your pads a little bit. If you make a mistake, like there's still a chance you could get hit in the leg or something like that. That's just much less. There's much less of an opportunity for that to happen in the field game. And then again, value the ball. Offense can't score if you don't have the ball. You know, you can't win games if you don't score more goals than the other team. So just value the ball. If you have a long outlet that's open and it's wide open, 100% chance, take it. If not, you know, check downs and looking for your players to clear the ball up with their legs is a great way to clear the ball. You just don't want to be throwing the ball over and over again, especially in the field game, where at the younger level, there's no shot clocks. Possessions are just that much more valuable. So really focus in on goalies valuing the ball. And then on your own time, this is, you know, exactly the same as what it was for box. And, you know, it's YouTube, again, is a great resource. Finding goalies that you're a big fan of and watching them and what works for them. You know, the ones that come to mind right now in college lacrosse, and you can find a lot of film on them. Drake Porter at Syracuse, Canadian kid. Colin Krieg at UNC, and Mike Adler at Duke. You know, 3 very, very talented goalies. There's a lot of film on them out there. Watch their film. What works for them? What doesn't work for them? What do they do that you might be able to add into your game? You can never watch enough film. You know, hand-eye drills. I talked about juggling. I talked about the card drill. You know, things that help work on your hand-eye. Footwork drills with the ladder. One of my favorite ones for field lacrosse is I'll go, if I'm on a field with a bunch of lines, you can usually find 2 lines that make a cross, and I'll use that and go in my stance. I'll jump forward, across, backwards, across, around the cross, right? I'll do something like 10 seconds on, 20 seconds off. I'll do that 4 times. Then I'll go I'll go the other way. So I'll do that clockwise and counterclockwise, 10 seconds on, 20 seconds off. Then I like to do jump forward, then backwards diagonal, forward, then backwards diagonal, and just continue that on for 10 seconds on, 20 seconds off, 4 times through, making sure that your goalie is in their stance, their hands don't drop. They can start with their eyes down, but as they get more comfortable, you want them to start to challenge themselves and bring their eyes up a little bit, so that they're looking forward. And those are my 2 main variations that I like to do with that. Wall ball, again, you can't stress it enough. You can never have perfect hands. You can always work harder or get better with your hands. And then lastly, my favorite is just play. playing with your buddies. You're at the park, you're in your buddy's backyard, playing mini sticks, playing some pool lacrosse, whatever it is. Like just having a stick in your hands and playing is probably one of the most beneficial things that led to my personal success. And you'll hear from pros all the time talking about how much of an influence just having fun and goofing around with your buddies had in the development of their game. But yeah, that wraps up the presentation. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to throw them into the chat, and yeah, I'll answer them to the best of my ability.
Yeah, I had a few that were kind of messaged to me. Again, just great. I always find the field lacrosse goalie position to be honestly my favorite to work with, because I think you can really have an impact. But I also think it's especially in Canada, not a lot of people really put time into it. But that field lacrosse goalie, not even just ball saving wise, can totally transform a game. If you have a strong goalie going into a tournament, you know, I mean, you're gonna put yourself in a really good position, right? What kind of gloves? What's the difference between the you're not talking box lacrosse gloves, I'm assuming, but what kind of gloves are you talking about, Dylan?
Yeah, so the field goalie specific gloves, they definitely have a stronger a thumb, and they have a little bit more, they'll be a little bit bulkier than the player glove. You know, there's a lot of different types of gloves out there. You know, Epic obviously who's putting these all on, Warrior, Maverick, those are a lot of popular ones in the PLL. STX is another one. But yeah, if you got a proper goalie glove, it's just going to protect your thumb a lot more and just protect your hands overall.
Okay, perfect. And what about pants? I actually had never seen goalie pants. We had taken young kids down to tournaments, even put hockey pants on them, but I have now seen some STX goalie pants. You recommend them? Don't recommend them? Like, what's your feeling on that?
Yeah, it's more all personal preference. I definitely recommend them for the very young goalies or the new goalies. Like I said, pad them up as much as you can. Try to build their confidence as much as possible, and then as they get older or as they get more comfortable, you can start taking gear off. But yeah, there are goalies in the PLL who wear the thigh guards and wear those thigh pads. But yeah, it's just personal preference.
Okay, perfect. Let's check if there was another question there. Oh yeah, foot speed. Do you have some practice tips for foot speed? It seems to be obviously a huge part of being a field goalie is having quick feet.
So my personal favorites are just doing speed ladder drills. And you know, the trainer that I have out here in Colorado works for the Mammoth. We'll go through a bunch of speed ladder drills. We'll do different cone style drills where, you know, we're running forward, we're turning and pivoting, we're working on shuffles, crossovers, all a whole bunch of different variations. But yeah, I would recommend looking at online. There, you know, the internet is endless, has endless amounts of drills and stuff that you can use to better your foot speed and things of that nature.
Now, I used to Kyle Miller actually gave me a drill that he used to use where he takes two sticks and puts it on the outside of the goalie's feet in early warm up to get them to step out of both of those sticks.
Right.
I always struggle with that drill because I've added, you know, a little bit much now sometimes to the drill. Kids are tripping on stuff. What's your feeling on a drill like that?
So I like the concept of it, of getting your goalies to move. But again, I live and die by the less is more. And I find sometimes that goalies overstep and they'll step themselves out of the cage. And that's one thing I've really started working on with my goalies more recently has been when you're stepping to make a save, don't step out of the goal, because if there's a rebound or something, the ball bounces out to an offensive player. Now, not only do you have to track the ball, but you have to get back in the goal, get reset, and then try to make a save where the player on the offensive side probably has already had enough time to pick it up and put it in the net. So that's one thing that I really emphasize with my goalies right now is to make sure that they're stepping to the ball, like towards the ball, or whether that's on more of a flat plane or, you know, more of an aggressive step out towards the ball. But I just always try to have my goalies stay within the post and stay within the goal.
That's great advice. Great advice. Anonymous attendee, Mr. Anonymous, Can you suggest any drills for in close shots?
Yeah, so this is a great opportunity to use tennis balls. One of my favorites is I'll just dump balls in front of the crease. I'll start on one side and walk across. And as I'm walking across, I'll just pick up a ball and take a quick shot. Pick up a ball, take a quick shot. So the goalie needs to follow your stick, make a save, or react, try to make a save, and then move on and try to do that again over and over and over again. That's one of my personal favorites and one that I use with a lot of my younger kids because, again, it has a ton of different aspects of the things that I just talked about. You're using tennis balls, so you're not killing your goalies. They have to have a short memory because shots are going over and over and over again. And then they also, can't be so caught up on letting a ball in because there's another one coming their way right away. So that's one of my personal favorites. And if you don't have tennis balls, you can get away with using lacrosse balls. You just obviously aren't going to shoot as hard. You're not shooting hard in general. It's just a great opportunity to use tennis balls.
That's great. One of the, best you're talking about watch video. One of the best videos I've ever watched is when Canada won their first world championship in 100 years or whatever it was, listening to Chris Sanderson be the field general over top of CBC's announcer. At one point in the video, if you watch it, you can't even hear the announcer. You can hear Chris yelling at, I think, Brody or something like that. Can you talk a little bit about some ways to, outside of just, getting them to communicate, like, do you get your goalie when he's on the sideline to still be yelling, those field general things? But what are some other techniques to get these field generals really moving?
So that's a good question. And I don't know if I have a perfect answer to that. But for my goalies, I like to talk to them and go over the defense with them and just talk to them about the things that I'm looking for them to say while they're out there. Obviously, it's hard because not only are they worrying about being the goalie and stopping the ball, but now you're asking them to run the defense as well. So it's not something that you can just like, we need you to communicate. And all of a sudden they'll just start talking. Like it's something that we need to kind of ease into. So, if you can start slow or small, I want you to always tell our guys to be topside or take a topside step. Or, I want you to focus on just saying who's hot and make sure that we have a hot guy. Start small. And then as they get comfortable with that, add something else on and then add something else on until it is really, the term you hear a ton is constant conversation where, the goalie is just always saying something one way or the other.
And would you, sorry, I lost my train of thought there. I was going to ask around the communication. Oh, after a goal is scored, would you recommend that the long poles or the defenders go to the goalie and that the goalie leads some type of communication after every goal, especially at the older level?
I don't know if it needs to be the goalie every time, but I definitely recommend having that conversation like, hey, what happened there? And then I'm sure someone would be like, well, this guy did this and this guy did that. And then we didn't do this. And then it ended up in the back of our net. Just like a quick conversation and then saying, hey, if they do this next time, let's try this or make sure that we're here. Just like a quick, it doesn't have to be anything big, but just something quick, so everyone's on the same page and then you move on.
Question here from Michael. This is a good one too. I actually had a goalie one time that we had 3 goals scored against us because he was so far in the cage, but he was a bit scared of the ball. How deep in the cage do you suggest a goalie play?
So again, there's just so many different ways that you can do this. I like to tell my goalies to be about a half step up, right? I know in the last World Championships, I was playing like this crazy high arc. And honestly, more or less, that just came from the very first game we played. We were playing a night game against England, and the balls that we were using were orange, but they weren't like the bright orange ones that we're used to seeing. And the lighting sucked, and I couldn't see the ball. So I was like, all right, I'm going to my box roots. I'm going to take a huge step out, and I'm just going to try and eat as many shots as I can. It worked. I kind of just kept doing it. But I wouldn't recommend them being all the way, like having a huge arc, but you don't want them to be super flat either. I recommend just having that like half step out so that way, they're cutting down a bit of angle. But this position is more or less like a reading and reacting position, more so than in box where it's like, okay, I'm going to take as much angle away as possible, which is definitely still a part of it. but it's not like boxing where you're taking, or like hockey, where you're taking as much angle away as possible and trying to force them to shoot wide. So I'll have them out a little bit. And another reason for that as well is if they get hit with the ball and it let's say they get hit in the leg and it bounces, it hits behind them, but it has some backspin. If you're right on your goal line, that's going in. If you're like a half step up, then there's a chance that ball bounces before the goal line and stays out of the goal.
That's great. Well, I'll talk a little bit about that then. You're back in the net a lot more, and like you say, it's quite a bit different than box. How much do you rely on baiting to try to get these shooters to go, stick side high, or and maybe you can talk through a couple different levels, because high performance high school is different than like house bantam, right?
Right. Yeah. And I used to be a big baiter. I remember like playing at the Hill. I would play like a super low stance, just trying to get guys to shoot high, because I was 6'5" in high school and I could grab everything from up high. And, I had really long legs. So if they did end up shooting low, like I was going to make the low save. So I was a huge baiter when I was younger. As I got into college and even past that, like guys just shoot so much harder and are such better shooters. They're going to hit their spots so much more that it's tough to be that much of a baiter. I still did a little bit around the crease. Like if someone caught the ball or was coming around the crease from X, I would bait a little bit to have them shoot high. And if they did shoot low, it would probably hit me. But for the most part, my game has been more sitting back, reading and reacting, waiting for that ball to come to me and reacting off that, rather than, all right, I'm gonna bait them to try to get them to shoot there. Because the problem with that is, if you're baiting someone, your first instinct is going to be to go where you're hoping they'll shoot. And then if they don't shoot there, you have a really hard time making that save.
Yeah, it used to drive me crazy in warm up because you'd be tucked halfway down the net. And I think I had all this power high and my power just wasn't there. What about playing percentages? For instance, you'll just see different types of shooters. You'll see a guy winding up, low, playing a percentage on that kind of a shot, low to high type shooter, or somebody coming across the middle. Do you do that a lot? Do you do a lot of sit and watch a game in a tournament, or tell your goalies in high school, hey, we're in a tournament, watch a game and kind of figure out where their percentages are?
Yeah, I mean, like I said for the film bit in the last presentation, I'm more so watching games to see where guys are shooting from, not so much like, oh, this guy is going to shoot low to high, or this guy is going to, throw a three-quarter bouncer at you. I more or less just want to know where the shots are coming from. That way, my goalies aren't thinking about like, okay, this guy's coach says he's going to be shooting low to high. Like I'm going to stay high and make sure that he doesn't beat me up top. Because then if he shoots a low to low on you, then you're screwed. Or if coach is like, all right, he's throwing a bouncer at you. Like they're not thinking about that. They're more thinking about, okay, when they do this, they're probably going to get a shot from this spot. Or, this team really likes to feed this guy and his honey hole is, 12 yards on the right wing, something like that.
What about bounce shots, Wardo? How do you teach goalies to attack them at the point of bounce, or what's your approach?
Yeah, so if you're playing on like a crappy grass field, like you see a lot of in like these summer ball tournaments, I try to get goalies to meet the ball as close to the bounce as possible, just because the bounces can be so inconsistent. For when you're playing on a turf field, once you kind of get an idea of how that turf is bouncing that day, you can kind of play it more true, because the bounce shots aren't going to change one shot from another like they would on like a crappy grass field.
Okay, great one. I have two more here. We'll see if anybody else has some. Tell me what separates good high school goalie to a college, like that step. What do you see the difference? You go and see a good high school goalie and then maybe he doesn't even play in college. What's the difference there?
Well, for one is, how do they adapt to the power? Because, guys in college, you're playing against men, they're just that much bigger, or, full grown women, they're that much bigger, they're that much stronger, they're that much faster. Like they're going to be able to shoot a lot harder. How do they adapt to that? How do they adapt to the speed of the game? And then another big one is just communication. Like, are they controlling the defense? Do they have everyone on the same page? And lastly is just like, how do they clear the ball? Because, I know I've seen a few goalies who were incredible ball stoppers, but you never knew what was going to happen in the clear. And it doesn't matter how many saves you make, if you throw the ball away every time that you have a chance to clear it, like that's not a recipe to success. So those would be my three main ones: is how do they adapt to the speed of the game? How do they run their defense, right? And what do they like with the ball?
It's like we planned this. It's a good segue into my my last question here. You're seeing shot clocks coming in more and more in field. You've obviously seen the proposed Olympic version of the game, which is essentially a field box game. I mean, it looks like a goalie's nightmare, field goalie's nightmare. How much do you focus in practice on up the field with a goalie? The shot clock looks to me like there could be at some point less emphasis on a good ball stopper and as much emphasis on the ability to get the ball back up the field. What's your take on kind of that process and what's happening?
Yeah, so I love to implement drills where the goalie needs to make an outlet pass after a save or a goal or whatever it is. So I love to do drills where, say we're just doing 6-on-6, defense needs to clear it after a stop or a turnover. A flow drill, like I love, one of my favorite drills to do is a 4v3, 5v4 continuous drill. So you'll go down a 4v3 one way, play it out, goal, save, turnover, whatever it is. After the 4v3, goalie picks up a ball, launches it up to a line, and they're going 5v4 the other way with the person who just played offense on the 4v3 as a midfielder, going back and being that fourth defenseman for them. And I love doing those kind of flow drills where the goalie needs to make an outlet pass to get the drill going.
That's great. Great. Any other questions from any of the attendees? I feel like I kind of got all these questions out. It separates you up. Seeing none. Again, this is why I coach. Getting to see a young man like you become such a admired professional and role model for a lot of kids. Knowing you when you were in your high school years and seeing you kind of go through the ranks has been a really kind of fun moment for me, and I'm sure Brody and all the guys at the Hill. But I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to give us poor Canadians a little bit of a goalie help down here. And again, obviously proud to have crossed paths with you before and see you on the floor, maybe Albany versus Colorado down in Colorado or something. I'll be able to come down there.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. And, thanks for having me. Like we were talking about before, the goalie position can kind of be a forgotten kind of position. So I hope I answered some questions for people out there or gave you guys some different ideas. But yeah, it was a pleasure to come and do this, and thanks for having me on.
Great advice. Thanks again, Dillon. This concludes our Lax Playbook series this year. We're going to make some changes and come back at this next year. I think it's great for the country to be able to use these representatives and get some good coaching advice, especially coming out of this pandemic. And I hope everybody has a great season. We will cut it short. Thanks to Epic Lacrosse, and everybody have a good Sunday night.